excellent turnout, and we're certainly delighted that everybody is able to be here. We've put on these events throughout the year, the annual breakfast as well as some lunch and learns. And the whole purpose of this is to try to share and gather information of what companies are doing in the St. John area in a sustainable manner. And the word sustainability has evolved over the years, originally with heavy emphasis on environmental sustainability, and now is evolving to be far more encompassing of all aspects of the business. And I think as we listen to our panel today, you'll realize that it is all encompassing. And it has a lot to do with internal messaging in your company and external messaging as to how you are dealing with people, planet, and even in the profit of your company, which is sort of moving me off into the B Corp world, which I'm very familiar with. So, our day today, just so you know the agenda, we have a panel of 3 people, and I think you'll enjoy those topics very much. And then we're moving on to our awards, and we promise to be finished at least 9:10 or a little bit before. So the vision of St. John, Sustainable St. John, is really to be a hub of information. And we've recently revised our website, and we want to be able to have all of our members and anyone wishing to be members to feel free to use this site, and we will try to keep it updated. And as the whole terms of sustainability evolves, we'll try to keep current with all the aspects of sustainability. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our founding members with the tremendous, tireless effort they've put into it, and the very same thing with our current board. There's a huge amount of energy has gone into pulling this together, and we feel that we've reinvented ourselves over the last 2 years and looking forward to a lot more participation, a lot more members, and moving this agenda forward in our city. We have had several of the lunch and learns that I've mentioned that have introduced topics that are probably new to the business community. And as we look at these things, the fact that sustainability today is very profitable for most companies, and that's a foreign concept. It was always considered to be an expense, and now it's actually a profit line for a lot of companies. So we will continue to work hard on our hub. And we are funded by our members, a lot of them sitting in the room here today, and we also are funded by the New Brunswick Environmental Trust Fund, which has helped us amazingly regroup and set our path for the future. So there are some slides rotating here of how we would love to have you involved as members, and also we have a toolkit on our website that helps you position yourself as to how sustainable you are and to try to set a goal of progression through the years as you improve in your sustainable efforts. At this point, I'm going to introduce Chris Peterson, and he will be the moderator today and introduce you to our guests. Thank you very much.
I'd like to invite the panelists to come up and join me on stage, and while they're making their way up, I'll start the introduction. So we're really excited today to have 3 thought leaders from our community in the greater St. John, New Brunswick area joining us. So I'll kind of start on this side with, you can take your seats if you'd like. With Seth Asimakos. I practiced it and I still screwed it up. Sorry. And he's the general manager and co-founder of the Community Loan Fund, as well as involved in a whole bunch of other things. Seems like every time I interact with you, there's a new thing coming up around that. So excited to have him joining us. Reading through his bio, it's interesting to see that before the Loan Fund, sounded like he spent a lot of time in Latin America, traveled across Canada planting trees, which I've never done, but I've heard horror stories about, which I'm sure you'd be happy to share. And then worked with Newcomer Settlement here in St. John. And I think it's an interesting path that's brought you to where you are today. Sounds like it was about 20 years ago that you learned about micro-lending. and kind of brought that concept to St. John, pitched the idea to stakeholders, and launched the Community Loan Fund. And amazing to see that continue to grow here in the community in terms of influence. And for anybody who's interacted with Seth, you know how passionate he is about social enterprise and creating opportunities through that space, driving entrepreneurship, and really generating a culture of positive change within the community. So please welcome me, or join me in welcoming Seth to our panel today. And then our second speaker is Emery Whalen, who is the operations manager with Commercial Properties Limited here in St. John. So Emery has been a lifelong resident of St. John, started with the company in 2005 when there was around 100,000 square feet under management within the company, and that's expanded over that time to over 1 million today. So, and he's mentioned that during that time, he's seen a real evolution in terms of the awareness, the engagement of their tenants, their customers, the building operators within New Brunswick around the value of sustainability, environmental management, performance management around the buildings themselves. And Commercial Properties launched the very first LEED Gold building here in New Brunswick, I believe in 2009. And then today there are 8 buildings under Commercial Properties that are managed under the BOMA BEST standard, which is a global leading standard for building performance within the environmental and sustainability space. So please join me in welcoming Emery. And then our third speaker today is Michel Losier, who is the Executive Director of Energy Efficiency and Customer Engagement for NB Power. He's also on the board of the Smart Energy Consumer Collaborative. And we've had a few conversations around that. It's a fascinating group and exciting to see what Michel's doing there. Michel's bringing a broad perspective around the utilities space and the transformation that's going on within that space. And having been involved with it a little bit myself, it's amazing to see what's happening in there. And Michel is one of the thought leaders around customer engagement and their involvement in that transition. So we're really excited to get his perspectives within that. One of the successes of Michel and NB Power recently was the award-winning PowerShift Atlantic project, which was really about this collaborative and innovative engagement with customers and our role as customers in driving sustainability and the integration of new technologies, renewables, and storage into that overall process. So please join me in welcoming Michel to our panel today. So thank you all very much for joining us. And what we want to do to start off the piece was to get your thoughts around the definition of sustainability. So Don kind of started us off today speaking about kind of how wide and broad that is. And it'd be great to hear from each of you just a few minutes around kind of where you see sustainability today, where you see it kind of it within your own organization as well. So maybe, Seth, I'll start with you, if you don't mind.
Hello. So we're the Community Loan Fund. We're a nonprofit organization. So often when I think of sustainability, I think kind of self-interested and think about the sustainability of the organization itself. If anybody else works in the nonprofit field, they know that sustainability is one of those things on the horizon that you're always trying to attain. But and then at 20 years, you say, well, I guess we've attained it to a degree. But it's something that we're always trying to get to. And often the discussion is about replacing government income with private sources and stuff like that. The other sustainability piece is what we do as an organization, which is help people create employment and work to generate their own income and it to be a sustainable job. And the community development piece that we're doing now with the hub for it to create sustainable development in neighborhoods and communities. And then the final piece is around being green and attaching that to what we do. So it starts with the simplest things like recycling at the hub, which everybody tends to do, but then also thinking a bit more visionary and being an idea generator to pursue other things like solar for the hub and so on.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And Emery?
We started thinking that environmental responsibility should be an important part of what we do quite a few years ago. And at that time, we kind of had a think green mantra. And today, I think we've seen how it's much broader and bigger than that. And Don referred to people, planet, profit. I think that's where we're going. And that's how I'm starting to think of sustainability. It's bigger than just, thinking green. And you used the word previously with me about being sensible, and I think that's the best definition I can come up with. What's sensible? It makes sense because it's healthy, because it's economical, and it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I know from our conversation too, we'll talk a little bit about how does that integrate into a business, right? Because there's sensible, but there's this bigger definition, like Seth is saying, right? And integrating that is, I think,
you still have to
one of the
pay for
challenges
it.
we face. Everybody struggles with, right? So, great, thank you. Michel?
Yeah, again, I think it's a vision. It's a long-term, sustainability is a long-term thing. What I've thought about is really more and more about our purpose, our raison d'etre, our big why as an organization or as an individual or as a community. And I think working towards sustainability is working towards trust, building trust over time with employees, with customers, with communities, with society at large, stakeholders. How do you build trust? And we talk NB Power, we talk safe, we talk reliable, economic, responsible energy. But more and more, this traditional view of the industry is changing from safe, reliable, and economical to comfort, convenience, and choice, with a new engaged energy consumer that has solutions. And we've got the forces of climate change, we've got the forces of disruptive technology and new players. The supply chain is turning on its head. It's a complete decentralization of energy that we envisage over time. It's exciting, it's exhilarating, it can be also exhausting, but it's exciting. And so really it's balance of all of this, but it's meaningful engagement. And the best definition, you mentioned Power Shift Atlantic, the Power Shift Atlantic project. When I saw sustainability in action, I saw employees and customers inspired and engaged, trying to make a difference. Really, and younger employees coming in saying, I want to work on that project. I want to be part of that. It means something to me personally, and it's important. And to say that that's the be-all, end-all, I think that's really the future of sustainability. It's doing it for the right reasons and having a big purpose, meaningful.
Right, fantastic. Well, thank you all very much. I think it's really helpful to get that perspective of kind of where you're approaching this from. And I guess our next question is around kind of translating some of this, right? Like the vision, that long-term, the why, into kind of how do you actually bring that into your organization? So maybe starting with you, Seth, right? When we think about this big picture of sustainability, how do you translate that into what you do within your organization and really embed that within your culture?
Well, recently we built the Social Enterprise Hub, and that was all about creating a collaborative culture in which we generate ideas that translate to action, that scale good things to have an impact. And we're a startup really as the hub. We're about a year and a half in. We have a collaborative. We have interesting players. We have the Human Development Council there, which does social justice research and policy development. ACAP's there, an environmental stewardship organization that's pushing the boundaries around that. We have the Learning Exchange that does GED training and workplace essential skills training, transition to work type of stuff. Ourselves around social finance and entrepreneurship development. And we have some micro-entrepreneurs and social enterprise activity in there as well. And the intent is to not only collaborate around social, administrative functions, but also around environmental. So it's important to do that. We're just at the early stages, really, in creating what Michel says is trust actually within the organizations there. And it's incrementally happening. So on a social side, we're actually collaborating on a major project that the Human Development Council put forward, and it's about youth transition to employment. And there, hopefully we're collaborating. We're going to add pieces that are social and environmental as part of that. We're doing administrative collaboration where we're hiring the same accountants and kind of getting more efficient in that way, and administration as well. And on the environmental side, we're going to be doing a solar project for the hub. And I mean, it's early right now, but the intent there again is to bring youth into the project to learn about photovoltaics and to actually be physically involved in placing panels and stuff like that, to put on our website a clickable icon that you can look at real-time production. And to us, it becomes, it's funny because I was talking to an investor about this solar idea, and he said, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Like, aren't you supposed to be doing the social thing and social economic thing? I said, yeah. Well, what's a return on investment and all this stuff? And I said, well, it's not so great, but I mean, it's part of the discussion. It's part of idea generation, and if we don't do it as an innovative hub, who else does it? So to me, it makes sense to have that full wraparound intent. That's, to me, what sustainable development is.
Fantastic. No, thanks a lot for that insight, because I think that is that challenge, right? Like, you're faced with, shouldn't you be focusing on social and economic issues? For a lot of businesses, it's shouldn't you be focusing in on profit maximization, right? And how do you kind of bring those things in? So I'd be interested to hear, Emery and Michel, if you have any additional thoughts from your perspective about kind of that culture within the organization.
It's hard to bring culture change in, and it's inspiring when I hear Seth talk about some of those things, because you're always, you're in the face of the people you work with all the time and making it part of what you do and who you are, and that's probably the only way we can do it. I know last year we had a couple people come to this event. This year I'm pleased that at least half a dozen of my colleagues have come this year. So it's starting, but it's I think our next challenge is to embed it in our culture, that always think what's the right thing to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just a quick one on that. It really starts with the leadership, and our CEO is a huge change leader. We've engaged the methodology called Accelerate, and it's how you take a large hierarchy like NB Power and move it into a network format and engage cross-corporate networks to move towards change. First of all, you have to identify what is that change, what's that big opportunity, where's the future, what's the future look like? So we've had 3 groups, they're called guiding coalitions of 40 across our organizations over the past 3 years form, and they have executive support. And these are people at all levels from all areas of the company that go back to their shops and they really start talking about some of the things that are coming down the pipe, because it can be hard to reach those far reaches sometimes. So you need to be methodical about change. Like culture eats strategy for lunch. We've heard it. I mean, Peter Drucker said it. It's absolutely true, and it starts at the top. You have to have a methodology. We've been really, really good at safety and reliability culture, but it's not one thing that does it. It's every day. It's meetings. It's safety tips. It's safety conferences. It's tailboard conferences. It's the constant reminding. It's in. Safety and reliability is totally in. So it's that same type of thing we need to do with sustainability that's starting to happen, because people want it to happen.
Yeah.
That's a good example, safety, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe just, as a follow-up question to that, how long would you say that it has taken to get to a sense of momentum? I know the issue with culture is, Seth, to your point, when we first started, is are we there? Are we not there? How far do we go? Safety is an ongoing piece, but how long would you say it took until you felt like, yeah, we're starting to make some progress here? Because I think there's probably a number in the room that are either in the middle of that phase, or maybe are on the other side of it, or maybe you're at the very beginning of that, of how long is this kind of journey going to take to get up and start moving?
It took us a few years. You mentioned that we did a Leeds building in 2009, but I know for several years there was a struggle with suppliers and contractors and someone like that who were used to speccing out materials the way they always did it.
Yep.
Okay, and to try to make that shift took a while, but now I think there's just so much momentum. I think we are hitting a tipping point with a lot of people, and I think we're accelerating that rate of change, hopefully. I'm an optimist.
Yeah.
don't know.
I think you have to be in this space,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
like-
yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I could ask Graham to answer the question, actually. Have we reached there, or we're getting there, how are we
Yeah.
getting there? I think it's slower too. Like we have these little problems that people want immediate fixes. Well, if you do the immediate fix, it's the easiest fix, and it generally isn't very sustainable often. So we have a little drainage issue, and we have neighbors that say, fix that damn thing. And the simplest stuff is to fix it with tile or do something that's pretty basic. Or do something that Graham's suggested, which is to create this garden and make it a little bit more interesting and sustainable, and discussion, have a discussion opportunity around it too. So it does take, I think, a little longer to do it differently. And you have to expect that and slow things down. And when you're building stuff, you're on this track, and to slow them down and say, well, what about this type of material? Or, it's tough when you have contractors saying that they want to get things done today.
I think it takes time. You have to involve people. When we did the Power Shift Atlantic project, we took people out of our generating stations that knew instrument and controls, and they built a virtual power plant. It's the same craft in a different place. So they felt part of it. And they started to see that, oh, there's a whole new world over here. It's called the decentralization of energy. And we're building a virtual power plant, and we're connecting loads out there, and we're pulling them back in to optimize wind integration. Wow. So how do you do more of that? And it's really making it real through projects like that. Energy efficiency, demand response, working with the next gens, with the shift energies of the world. How do we get to that place where, this supply chain is really changing? But how do you take your current supply chain strength and put it into that new supply chain so they can feel, oh yeah, it's the same thing, just a different place.
Right.
A lot of it really is.
Yeah.
You need project managers, you need accountants, you need controls people, but you're on the customer side of the equation versus the centralized side of the equation now. So, but it takes time. It's not a one and done. It's all every day, and it's really paying a lot of attention to it from the top down.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great.
And
I think
bottom
that's,
up.
Yeah, I think that's really good insight, because as Emery said, it's sensible, and it's also one of those things like, if common sense was only more common, we'd be better off, right?
Yeah.
But it takes time to get people bought into that. So that's great. So maybe Emery, it'd be great to have you speak to, what are some of the key sustainability practices commercial properties has put in place, and what are some of those lessons learned, considering about the broader audience as well?
It's kind of interesting. Last week we were doing our monthly financial review. The management team sits down. You look at those standard reports, income statements and balance sheets and cash flow reports. And then we looked at the next one, and it sort of hit me at that time. This is our consumption report. And we've made that a key part of our financial review every month, that, we do measure electricity and gas and water. We have a budget. We compare our actual to a budget. And we look for variances, and we chase down. Then we send people out to chase down the anomalies, and it's just the same as a financial report in our importance. So what was their gigajoules? What was their kilowatt hours? And why is that building over budget? And so we've made that just so second nature to us. I had to stop and think. I wonder if that's a standard practice at a lot of companies. I don't know. Is it, or maybe not. But maybe it should be or could be. And, we do other things as well with our tenants. We're pleased to have expanded our recycling program last year to include batteries and electronics. And blew us away. We collected 500 pounds of batteries from our tenants. They were bringing them in from home and everything instead of going to the landfill. Over 5,000 pounds of electronics. It's amazing. When I think of lessons learned, though, I think what I would encourage people to do is don't discount the small stuff. It really adds up. The big mega projects, we'll do investments in big chillers and buildings and things like that, and they do pay off over time. But the little stuff is easy to do, and it really does add up, just like those batteries did.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, thanks a lot for that. Seth and Michel, are there some key practices you put in place? Or?
I would say that we're building the key practices. It's been pretty incremental. One of the things, because we're a year a little bit over a year into the hub, we're going to survey the tenants and partners about what have we done right and what do we need to do more of. I think that will be part of the discussion for sure, is how do we embed that more, the green piece, but also the collaborative culture piece, because I think they go together if we want to create sustainability for sure. And look forward to testing and replicating some interesting things. So where the solar that we can learn something about, because we're going to develop some other little properties in the neighborhood and trying to transfer some of those learnings. That's my hope, but and I hope that that we do have a full collaborative model that we're building here.
Maybe just picking up on Emery's point around measurement, right? For the Social Innovation Hub, I imagine there's so many variables that come into what success looks like. How are you approaching that?
We're not, to tell you the truth, just to be honest. I think individually we do our own measurements, and so the real idea is to bring it together and say, and I think that's working with Graham will be important, but not only Graham on the green kind of piece, but also with the Human Development Council around social determinants as well, and the learning exchange around learning outcomes and so on. So I think we have to bundle it and say, what are we doing collectively here, and what do we want to do more collectively here? How do we get there?
Fantastic. No, that's great. Thanks. And I appreciate that insight, because I think what you're probably all hearing is that, and probably all of us are struggling with, how do we actually execute on the sustainability piece? And I think it's always good to hear that not everybody has it figured out fully just yet, right? So, Michel, are there some key practices?
Yeah,
or
just a couple of quick
lessons
ones.
learned?
Like we've got a clear target by 2042 of reducing 600 megawatts and 2 terawatt hours, which is about the equivalent of a MAC-TWAC generating system off the system, by engaging consumers into new technologies and distributed generation, energy efficiency, demand response, all kinds of new technologies. So with that target, we start to establish clear goals. We have to build that virtual power plant over a 25-year period. That's an entire transformation of the supply chain of NB Power. It's completely reversed. It's literally building a negative power plant to 600 megawatts in 25 years. Right. That's a whole new way of doing business. So when you establish targets like that, and we start to see, well, we have 18 high voltage chargers around the province. We're probably the most networked province of high voltage, high speed EV charging in the country right now. Not to say we don't have work to do there. We have work to do everywhere, but that's one area that's starting to take hold. And there was investment by the federal government, investment by NB Power to start to build that infrastructure. So laying out some of this foundational stuff, but it takes bold leadership. And it takes that vision, takes that target, those goals, and then people rally around that. Communities will rally. So I think that's a big part of it. And there's more to it. I mean, obviously, we're doubling investment in energy efficiency programs in the next 2 years in the province. Today, we're a $20 million energy efficiency system in New Brunswick. 2 years from now, it'll be a $40 million investment in energy efficiency, multi-fuel, multi-sectoral. So we're rekindling and re-energizing energy efficiency. And by the way, just a little pitch here. May 23rd and 24th, there's Re-Energizing Energy Conference, Energy Efficiency in Fredericton, May 23rd and 24th this year, just about to launch. So just so people have a heads up.
That's great. Thanks. And we'll get that information, get that up on the site as well. And that's great. Thanks for that insight, because I think it is that, like, what are those little things, right? And I think the targets, don't forget about the small stuff within that, right? And I think that engagement side is
If I
really
could add
key.
one more piece that's really critical for us, and I think for everyone, is the engagement piece. And it's something we have to work harder at. It's the stakeholder engagement. It's really getting out of our offices. It's working across our silos in the organization, but getting out of our silos, getting out of the organization its entirety. Meeting the Samirs at St. John Energy and going to the city of Moncton and getting to know one another and getting to know, because the new streetlight is an iPhone. It has 17 value propositions for a city. It happens to be a streetlight. Today, the old streetlight was a dumb streetlight. This new streetlight can read meters, it can talk, it can do smart garbage, smart security, smart traffic. It can do all kinds of things. But that's a collaborative, co-creative, innovative solution with a bridge business case, because there's multiple value propositions there now. It's no longer a silo. It's a light that NB Power owns. It's a light that provides multiple value streams. So this co-creation and this collaboration and innovation, it's a whole new way of working. But we got to get to know one another better.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's such a key point. And it's part of, as Don was saying, kind of the role of Sustainable St. John is trying to generate that collaborative culture to share some of those insights from yourselves and each of us in terms of both the challenges and solutions and victories we've had, as well as some of the lessons learned of like, oh, we tried this and it did not work, right? So thank you for sharing that. So kind of a question for you, Michel, is around, people say that sustainability is revolutionizing business, right? And we'd love to hear from you, particularly on the technology side and kind of the broader implications of that. What have you seen within MB Power in that space and how it's transforming business?
Well, it really comes down to, I think we've talked a little bit about, there's a decarbonization movement, it's a decentralization of energy and digitization. Like basically, the new energy consumer has a lot more choices. So I think the sustainable future really involves everyone. It's a partnership. It's an engaged society. It's an engaged customer. It's an engaged employee and NB Power, but also how do we find win-win solutions? So if we take electric vehicles or energy efficiency and demand response, solar, batteries, all this stuff that's evolving, connected home, connected business, how do we take 12 power plants and couple it with 10,000 solar systems 5 years from now with an intelligent system in the middle, which is an intelligent network in the middle of that? How do you make a symphony out of all of that so that the storage can offset peaks, can reduce fossil fuel, can offset the need to build a new power plant down the road, can add value to end consumers that want to be autonomous? Not many people want to go off the grid. People still want more autonomy, they want more resilience, they want new solutions, but they not necessarily want to go off the grid. They still want to stay connected. So how do we build that future in a way that is a win for the ecosystem, win for the environment, win for the utility, but more importantly, a win for the consumer down the road. And so we co-create solutions to really benefit the whole. That's what we're trying to work at with a modernized grid at NB Power. It's going to take some time. And we're not, it starts with energy efficiency. The basic is efficiency. People are putting renewable energy systems on homes that aren't efficient yet, that are leaking. That's not the right way to do it. Let's get the efficiency right. Let's get the conservation right. Then let's go to renewable. So it's how to help consumers, businesses, homes, educate, empower, and get into that future. But I think we're all part of it, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thanks. And Seth and Emery, thoughts from you on kind of both the revolution within business around sustainability and the influence of technology? Or
I think I'm seeing more exciting change in the past year than I've seen in the past 10 years. And you mentioned the car charging network that MB Power's built. We bought an EV car this year as part of our fleet, and we know that 4 out of 5 of our tenants drive themselves to work, so personal transportation is important to people. So we've installed a couple of our own charging stations at a couple of our buildings, at the Mercantile Center here uptown and over by the Ocean Steel headquarters on Chelsea Drive. And they're public, they're free to use to the public. There's only $1.50 an hour to charge or something like that on the Flow network. But the best news I heard is that an employee in one of those buildings bought an EV car mainly because of the accessibility at their place of work. And I said, oh, wow, we did something right. So that was fun. Doesn't have an immediate payback. It's a longer term payback, despite what the CBC thinks. It's going to take a while to get there. But I think we're doing the right thing. We're going to build more. So that's a good thing. I think that's revolutionizing personal transportation. I'd like to see residence construction revolutionized. We're trying to do our bit with commercial construction, and I don't know, you're doing your bit with the social enterprise hub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for us, as far as technologies in that area, I mean, we're just kind of brushing the canvas a little bit. And I mean, Michel's right, and this is what I heard from the investors, that it's inefficient. But for us, it's also to have the discussion and have another data point in the foggy city center and see what is produced. And what battery storage capacity we have to keep it going in those 3 or 4 days that become foggy or something like that in the summer. We're very sunny in the winter apparently, so that's good news. But to me, it's still it is. I think you have to have both centralization to create those economies of scale that you're doing, but decentralized, experiments. So that's what I see we're doing.
That's fantastic. And I think it's interesting to hear that theme of kind of co-creating and collaboration coming through, right? So Seth, you talking about our role to bring in those solar panels as an innovative entrepreneurial organization, right? And all the work MB Power is doing in terms of enabling the energy efficiency within the customer base. And then Emery, your point around, we put a charging station out there, that an individual building occupant isn't going to be able to do, right? But that as an organization, you've enabled that kind of solution going forward. And I think that's why we see broadly within the sustainability space is this desire for companies and organizations, not just to sell me a widget, but help me be part of this solution to this bigger piece, right? And I think that's the exciting role, and that's kind of the revolution within business is this expanding responsibility around it. So,
Just quickly, if I may, technology, a lot of people don't think about electricity and energy and may never want to, but I believe technology is going to get to a point in the connected home and the connected business that you won't even have to think about it. It's just going to happen for you. It's coming. It's coming. Like companies like Amazon, Google, Nest, they're working at solutions. They're hiring people from the energy sector. They're putting things together so that it'll be set and forget. So for the 1 in 10 that really want to play and get right into it, that's fine. People can fill your boots, but you won't have to do that. And you can live the experience in the future. So, and prices are dropping and things are becoming more competitive. This, again, doesn't happen overnight, and there's all aspects of society that need to be brought into this.
yeah.
It starts with efficiency.
Yep. No, I think that's great. And maybe that's a good segue into kind of our final question, which is around where do you see sustainability going? Where's the future here? Right? Or where are you driving it within your organization? So maybe, Michel, if you want to carry on from that thought.
Yeah, I think pretty much, I think it's an exciting time in the future. I think there'll be more engagement and inspiration around solutions that are meaningful. I'd like to say my vision of the future is, for our company, and this is me right now, but it's an enhanced quality of life in New Brunswick through energy solutions. And how do we make that happen? So quality of life is a very broad term, but it can be, how do we enhance the quality of life for all New Brunswickers with energy solutions going forward? What kind of a platform does that look like? And how do we bridge that? And how do we become a trusted energy curator, energy solutions curator going forward? And potentially provider as well. We've always been a provider, but there's opportunities to provide. But there's an evolving ecosystem with many new players, with engaged customers, and our job is to do just that, is to start engaging customers. And it starts with efficiency.
There you go.
So, it really does. It's as basic as that. It starts with just getting people in the know.
Great. Thank you. Emery, your thoughts on where this is going?
Yeah, it's going fast. I think Don alluded to B Corps, people, and planet, and profit. I think that's where we have to go. There's huge systemic challenges out there, whether it's climate change or species extinction, poverty right within our own city. These are all things that should matter to us if we're concerned about sustainability. And we're growing in terms of our maturity on this topic. I'm optimistic that we'll face these challenges and deal with them.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Seth?
Yeah, no, I find it exciting when you bring those three elements together for sure. And for us, it's pushing us more to think green within the people piece. And as we explore new opportunities in the neighborhood and building new assets, that we look at opportunities to bring in that technology. And working with groups like NextGen in that space, I think it's going to be exciting. And I'm excited always the fact that we got ACAP to come into the hub as well, because I think the other three are kind of social economic types, social justice type of groups, and to have ACAP with us, I think it adds a lot of value. We haven't exploited that value enough already, I'm hoping that we do that over the next couple of years to really push the envelope.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very, very much for all those insights. In the interest of time, we're not going to open it up to questions, but if you're able to stick around after, you can connect with any of the panelists or any of the members of the St. John, Sustainable St. John board. So we're all wearing name tags. Feel free to track us down, and hopefully this is a spark of a number of ideas for yourselves in terms of specific nuggets you can take back to your organization, ideas that have sparked within you, and so you take a very specific action and actually kind of change the path coming out of today. So, and I think you've all provided some great inspiration as well as some very practical, pragmatic insights about what it takes, how long it takes, and what some of those steps along the journey are. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have the pleasure of presenting the awards this morning, and so we'll get right to it. Our first award recipient is an environmental stewardship organization, and they've partnered with the World Wildlife Foundation in Canada to host the annual Woolastook, or St. John River Summit. This brought together government, non-government organizations, First Nations, and community representatives to discuss the overarching issues within the watershed and to highlight the great work being done in the greater St. John area. They're being recognized today for their efforts in recycling, composting, and hazardous waste management. So I'd like to ask a representative from ACAP to come up and receive their award. Our next award recipient is a company who has made great strides in sustainability over the past several years, and they do a ton of work in our community. Right now, we are recognizing them for their efforts with their people or their staff. Their staff are encouraged to volunteer at local organizations such as the Boys and Girls Club, Romero House, Outflow Ministry, the local hospice, and Cloverdale Centre. So I'd like to ask Clow Canada to come up and receive their award. Our next award recipient has grown into a key community partner in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, while also continuing to be mindful of the environment. Today, we'll be recognizing them for their efforts in source reduction and buy local practices. I'd like to ask Connection Works to come up to the stage. The next company we'll be recognizing was one of the members of the panel today, so Commercial Properties Limited. And as mentioned there, they're being recognized for their efforts in displaying leadership by installing the EV charging stations in a couple of their office buildings, as mentioned, at OSCO and at the Mercantile Centre parking garage. They're also being recognized for efforts in energy, cleaning products, hazardous waste management, water, and leadership. So I'd like to ask Commercial Properties Limited to come up to the stage. The next company is a residential and commercial cleaning company. The things they're doing are very exciting, specifically developing their own environmentally friendly cleaning products to be used in their services. They're being recognized today for their sustainable efforts in water, transportation, source reduction, recycling, buy local, of course, cleaning products, and people. I'd like to ask someone from Honeydews to come up and receive their award. Our next recipient is another small business who has installed a domestic solar hot water system and a 6 kilowatt grid-tied solar panel system for their business. I would like to ask Cannon Animal Hospital to come up and accept their award for their efforts in energy, printing, and recycling. Our next recipient is a renewable energy developer, and one of their most notable projects being the design of a rotating solar panel system on the canopy of the penthouse of the St. John Regional Hospital. It generates 14 megawatts of energy for the hospital, and they've also created Net Zero Home in Quispamsis, New Brunswick. For their efforts in transportation, energy, and buy local, I'd like to ask NextGen to come up. Our next recipient has been definitely doing some work on improving sustainability in our waterways. They've recently partnered on the UNB Healthy Harbour Initiative, a multi-year, multi-stakeholder initiative, and with Eastern Charlotte Waterways on an underwater sound monitoring project in the harbor. They're being recognized today for that, as well as their efforts in transportation, recycling, buy local, and water, of course. I'd like to ask Port St. John to come up and receive their award. Next, we have a business who has installed several EV charging stations at both their long-term and their short-term parking lots. They're being recognized as well for their efforts in energy, recycling, and water. I'd like to ask the St. John Airport to come up and receive their awards. Finally, we have a company who is receiving special recognition today for one of their recent sustainability initiatives. So I'm going to ask Greg Hemmings to come up and chat to us a little bit about that initiative.
In June, I had the great honor of crossing the country with the Governor General's Leadership Conference. And of course, the theme this year was Truth and Reconciliation, and it was not my first time traveling the north. We did the full Arctic from west to east, visiting all of the Inuit communities. And like I said, I've been up to the Arctic 5-6 times now, learning a lot from Inuit elders and even more recently from other First Nations leaders. And it's really interesting to note that when I talk about the triple bottom line and B Corp and all these other sustainable practices of business, it is the dialogue that our First Nations people have been having for so many years. And it's good that we're finally jumping on board now as a business community, but we really do have to acknowledge the wisdom that has come before us. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is, when I talk about triple bottom line, people, profit, and the planet, those 3 Ps come in different orders, depending on what type of company you are. Some people are really about the environment, so it would be more the planet, people, profit. Some organizations are more about making profit first, and they would say they'd be profit, people, planet, for example. My company, since we started a little over 11 years ago, was really focused on people. And our order of the triple P was people, then profit, then planet. And it's interesting because really the philosophy I have is it's tough to make impact or make change if you're not making profit. So business acumen is so critical if we want to make a positive impact in the world. But for our company in Asimakos, somehow I managed to build this company with my team, and we weren't profitable for many, many years. And that's because profit wasn't first, but people was. And the fact that we had a company that was built on the values of making our community a better place, and my amazing team who has helped build this really helped us make this company what it is today. But we've kind of ignored the planet side over the past few years. It's not that we don't value the environmental sustainability side, it's just that we're really trying to figure out how to build a business and be good to our community and be good for people. So this year has been really exciting because we have enjoyed a few years of really great profits, and we're starting to get our stride as a company that can work in Canada and the US and abroad. But we really want to put our money where our mouth was. So this year we joined the United Way for a thing called the $1 Million Pledge. So over the next 10 years, Asimakos is joining 9 other companies who are committing $10,000 a year for 10 years, so $100,000 per company to go to the United Way. The fun thing about this little club is we get to have a say on where that particular money goes. So we're going to raise $1 million in the next 10 years. And this is a really fun way for us to say yes, and we are accountable to putting a portion of our profits, in fact, a portion of our top line sales, into our community through the United Way. But I still felt that we weren't doing enough for the environment. So this year, I'm really excited to also connect with Community Forest International. And I don't know if anybody knows, does anybody know CFI out of Sackville? A few people. Check them out. They're doing incredible things. So CFI is a sustainable forestry organization. They've got a fair bit of property in Tanzania, in Pemba, that they're doing a lot of different experimental research on how to combat climate change in that part of the world through essentially building trees or planting trees and growing trees in that environment. They also have a big plot of land outside of Sussex, and they're based out of Sackville. And what they're doing is a really fun way of carbon offsetting. So instead of putting money into a land trust, per se, like to offset the different carbon emissions, what they're doing is they're helping companies like us buy more forests in New Brunswick, not to keep them from having trees harvested, but to make sure that they're harvested in a very sustainable way. So we did our math, and since October, which is the beginning of our year, we've had 72 flights as a very small company, and that's only our first quarter. We are on airplanes all of the time. So when we're trying to figure out what our environmental impact is, making videos, it's not so harmful. We've got some issues with the server space that we use, but it's our airplane travel that is what is bringing most of our carbon emissions to a place that's not so good. So with that, we are jumping into a program with them, and if anybody wants to talk about it later or wants to learn more, CFI is going to be opening this up to a lot of other organizations as well, and we're going to be able to offset all of our carbon over the next 5 years by helping them buy more forests and support the local forestry economy. So we're very excited to do this, and for me, the last few years I've always said this makes good business sense. I keep on going to the business sense side of this, and it does make good business sense, but for someone like me that's been blessed to be able to see the world and go to many developing countries, I have seen the social impacts of climate change, like with my own eyes. Like, it's poverty and climate change are connected together so closely. And Graham, you and I have talked about that a lot too. How in St. John, there's a very tight correlation to nature and conservation and the way we treat the planet and how our social systems work. So this is a really exciting time for having South. I want to say it's no longer a business good. Now it's really a moral decision. It's been too many years of us saying that we're good for the environment, saying we're good for the people, but now this is our year that we're actually putting our money where our mouth is, and I'm excited to continue chatting with any of you about both those initiatives. If anybody wants to talk about the $1 million pledge and get involved with something like that, as well as a CFI buying up forests to offset some of our carbon, I'd be very happy to discuss that with you. So thanks so much, Sustainable St. John. Really appreciate being here on the breakfast. Thank you.
Well, we're doing very well. It's just about 9 o'clock, and I said 9:10. And thanks again for our audience, our members, and the financial support that we get from the Environmental Trust Fund, and also the membership from our members. Otherwise, these events wouldn't take place. So there's a card on your table. Everyone has one. We would love you to engage. The panelists talked a lot about engaging, sharing, being a hub. So this card is direct access to us. We would love you to check us out on the website, become members, give us ideas, and help us grow this movement. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.